EOS R7 unboxing and first impressions.
All right, exciting day today, guys. So 2 weeks ago, I put out a poll asking you guys, the subscribers, which APS-C size camera would you like me to buy to test and review on this channel? And I put up the EOS R10, the R7, the Fuji X-T5, and the Fuji X-H2. And you guys picked this one right here. I think over 70% of you wanted the EOS R7. This was the clear and favorite winner, so here it is. And we are gonna be making some videos about this camera on this channel. And I also have the EOS R, I have an R5, and we're gonna be comparing this camera to those cameras. We'll check out resolution, video features, usability. I mean, specs are kind of important, but for me, the most important thing is usability. Like, can I just pull this out of my pocket and shoot a wedding? Is it good at shooting weddings? Can I shoot events? Can I shoot portraits? All this kind of stuff. So we'll compare this camera against those other Canon cameras and we'll see how they all stack up. So I'm pretty curious. This is gonna be a fun little adventure. But first things first, let's get the camera out of the box. We got our paperwork, our cards, our instruction manual, which is super handy. I always, if you're picking up a new camera, I know people hate this, but read your instruction manual. There's a lot of information in there. It's very handy. We got the strap, charger, and that new battery. All right, so here we go. Look at that. Okay, it is tiny. Oh my God, like it really feels, it feels tiny. Holy cow, I wasn't expecting it to be so small. It's actually about the same size as an EOS R. I don't know why it feels so much smaller. That's so strange. It does feel pretty small. Has the flippy screen, which is nice. Also, it has this little joystick wheel multi-controller thingy. I'm curious to try that out. That looks kind of cool. I don't know what that's all about, or if it's gonna be good, or just a novelty. I know the EOS R had the multi-function touch bar on the back as well, and some people complained about it, but I kind of liked it. Once you figure out how to use it, it becomes really handy. And I guess one of the videos I'll make is comparing these two cameras because they are different tools for different types of photographers, and which one is best for you. All right, so let's go over some of the features with the R7 and talk about what makes it so interesting. So we are now filming with the R7 in 4K fine mode, so that's 7K downsampled to 4K. So it should be kind of sharp and crisp. It's focusing on my eye. I'm really happy with the tracking on this camera so far. And we're filming at 23 frames per second, ISO 800, f2.8 with the 15 to 35. Now, the first thing you got to be aware of with an APS-C size sensored camera is that there's going to be a 1.6 crop. So we are now at 15 millimeter on the 15 to 35 and 35 millimeter. So as you can see, this isn't exactly 15 millimeter. It crops in a little bit because of the APS-C size sensor. So, I mean, I'm just gonna touch on this quickly for anybody who's new to APS-C and they don't really understand this. Full frame sensors were designed to mimic 35 millimeter full frame film. So when you put a vintage lens on your camera, for example, with a full frame sensor, the image circle projected from that vintage lens onto the sensor covers the whole sensor. Now with APS-C, it's smaller than full frame, so you're only getting the center part of the lens, which is kind of cool because you're getting the sweet spot of the lens, but also if you want to shoot at a greater distance, you're kind of zoomed in on everything, which is kind of cool. If you're shooting sports or wildlife, it's definitely a good thing. But if you're trying to shoot YouTube videos like this and you're trying to get really wide shots, it's not going to be so wide. You're going to have to get like an ultra wide lens to get a wide shot. So that's just something to keep in mind. The EOS R7 features a 32.5, double check, yes, 32.5 megapixel sensor. And in my opinion, that's right in the sweet spot. Anything between 30 and 35 is perfect because it gives you enough resolution that you can crop in a little bit and you don't have to worry about images degrading in quality. It's great for social media, and the other thing too is that the file sizes aren't so massive that they're going to eat up all your hard drive space. So I think for mirrorless photography, digital photography, 30 to 35 is perfect, and the R7 fits right into that sweet spot. Okay, another thing to keep in mind if you're buying the R7, especially if you're buying it for sports or wildlife, if you're shooting things that are moving fast, like hummingbird wings, for example, or golf swings or baseballs and stuff like that, the camera has a mechanical shutter that shoots at 15 frames a second and an electronic shutter that shoots at 30 frames a second. And a lot of people who are new to cameras or don't understand this would definitely pick the 30 frames a second and go with the electronic shutter. And it's great if you're shooting static objects, but if you're shooting anything that's moving fast, like let's say a golf swing, golf club. Someone takes a swing, you're taking a shot with an electronic shutter, and what happens is you got the sensor and it's reading line by line. It's reading all the pixels, boom, 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 right? And the readout speed is kind of slow on the R7, so when it reads the first couple lines, the golf club is here, and by the time it gets to the bottom, the golf club is here. So it's actually, you're capturing the motion, so you get this wonky jello effect or warpy effect with your shots. And here's some examples so you can see what I'm talking about. And that's because the electronic shutter is slow at reading the information. So if you are shooting fast action sports, switch to the 15 frames a second mechanical shutter, because the mechanical shutter is a lot faster than the electronic shutter. So that's just a tip, something to keep in mind. Of course, this, like if this sensor was stacked, it would be a lot faster, but it's not stacked. If you want a stacked sensor, you're gonna have to buy an R3. But yeah, in terms of shooting wildlife and sports, I think this is a great camera for that, because the APS-C sensor gives you extra reach. The camera's fast, its focusing ability is really good. But just keep in mind, if you're shooting things that are moving real quick, you know, you might have to adjust your shutter to mechanical. The ISO range on this camera seems pretty good. Goes from 100 to 32,000, expandable to 51,200, I believe. Yes, so it's pretty good, pretty standard, pretty typical. I'm gonna take this camera out and I'm gonna do some tests against the R5, and we're gonna do some low light tests at different ISO ranges to see how it performs. So if you wanna see that, definitely subscribe to the channel. Also, I'll just mention this right now, if you want me to test out the R7 against the R or R5 in any way, let me know in the comments below, and I will make a video testing it out and show you guys the results. Now, when it comes to autofocus, I've had zero issues with this camera. It's really good. It's tracking my eye right now. All right, so this is an interesting feature right here. I've set up this box right here in the middle, and I've set the camera to eye tracking, and this is a feature that the R doesn't have, is it'll track my eye if it's in the box. But if I come off to the side here, it's not gonna track my eye. Oh, it kind of wants to, but it'll only track what's in the box. And that's pretty cool. So you can kind of define an area and say this and just track whatever in that box. That's pretty awesome. The menu system for the autofocus is slightly different on the R7 than it is on the R5, so there's a little bit of an adjustment I had to make. It just works slightly differently, but it still works great. I'm not saying it's bad in any way. The one thing I am wondering about though is the autofocus in this camera. Is it dual pixel autofocus 2? Or just dual pixel autofocus, because I know Canon upgraded to dual pixel autofocus 2. I checked the literature on the Canon website, it says dual pixel autofocus on the R7. So I don't know if it's got the newest focusing or if it's got the old tech or what. I mean, if you know, let me know in the comments down below, because I was checking the Canon website and I couldn't find any info on that. Now, let's talk about IBIS for a second. The R7 has 7 stops of IBIS, which is fantastic. Plus you have digital IS and digital movie IS and digital movie IS enhanced. Is that what it's called? Canon and these weird names. But anyway, so you have IBIS in the camera, you have IS in the lens if your lens is IS enabled, then you have digital IS and digital IS enhanced. So you can create some pretty stable footage. So for me, the big question is how stable is the R7 IBIS compared to the R5? Now the R5 is an older camera, older tech. R7 is newer tech, so it should be more stable. Plus the sensor itself is smaller, so it's more lightweight. Will the IBIS be able to control the wobbles or shifts or whatever better? Will it be more stable? How close is the R7 to gimbal-like versus the R5? So I'm really curious. I'm gonna make a video specifically testing out the IBIS on the R5 and R7, and we'll just dive into that and explore it and see where it goes, because I'm so curious, like, do we even need a gimbal anymore? Will the R7 be good enough for handheld, provided you're not shaking your hands? Like, if you're steady-handed, how smooth will the footage be? So yeah, that's gonna be exciting. I'm looking forward to making that test video. All right, so let's talk about video footage with the R7. There's 2 things that jump out at me right away with the R7, and one is the fact that the camera knows what orientation it's in, and that is huge, because I know before with the R5, when I filmed shorts or reels or TikToks, I load the footage up onto my computer and I have to turn my head sideways to kind of see what it looks like, right? And then you have to load it up in your video editing program and then twist it 90 degrees so it fits in the vertical timeline and all that stuff. So with the R7, that data is put into the EXIF data so that when you play it on your computer, it'll actually play vertically. And when you take that video and you load it into Premiere Pro, it'll actually pop into the timeline vertically, which is awesome. I don't know about DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut and all those other things, but I assume it's probably the same with those programs as well. But yeah, thank you, Canon, for that. That is a huge time saver. I don't have to sit there and twist everything by 90 degrees. And another nice thing with the R7 is that 30-minute record limit is done. It is gonzo, finito. And Canon finally joined the party. They're a little late to the party, but I'm grateful they finally came to the party and gave us unlimited recording. Now, this is also contingent on your battery life. So if your battery dies, obviously the recording stops. And if your media fills up, the recording stops. But you can mitigate that by putting a dummy battery in the camera, which I have right now, so I don't have to worry about batteries dying. And you can also record to a Ninja recorder, Ninja V or other recorder with a bigger storage space, so you could probably record for a couple hours. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And the camera also has this new overheat warning system, so it doesn't just blink red and then overheat and shut down. It gives you like levels of overheating. So as it gets closer to overheating, it'll let you know. So if you're doing something important with a client, you can maybe stop, let the camera cool down, or switch something out, or come up with some sort of solution. At least you have the option. It's not blink, 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 done. All right, so now when it comes to the video features on this camera, it's good and it's bad, but the bad isn't necessarily so bad and the good is still good, but it all depends on your perspective and what angle you're looking at it from, right? So take two types of people, right? We have a professional videographer or somebody who aspires to be a professional videographer, and then we have somebody who just wants to create social media content. You want to create some photos and videos for Instagram and TikTok, some YouTube videos and stuff like that. So those are the two different people here. And if you're someone who just wants to create social media content, the R7 is fantastic, right? Perfect camera. It's one of the key features, I'm just going to touch on this quickly, is the fact that the microphone jack and the headphone jack are on opposite sides of the, I guess, the connection panel, so they don't block the screen when you're trying to record video, and that is huge. That is huge. That's a big deal. That's definitely a big deal if you have the screen facing towards you and you can see yourself as you're recording and that kind of thing. But on the other hand, if you're a professional or someone who aspires to be a professional videographer or a professional videographer, you'll find the lack of features in the R7 limiting, right? When it comes to recording, if you're shooting regular video, you're limited to 8-bit 420 H.264 codec. So when it comes to 8-bit, if you want to color grade and you want to push your video this way or that way, by the way, we're filming in regular 4K right now, or 4K fine in 8-bit 420 right now. But if you want to push your color grades to the limit, you're going to be kind of frustrated because the video will fall apart. At 8-bit, it's not necessarily the best thing, but you can get 10-bit. I'll talk about that in a second. So when it comes to the regular video recording on this camera, you get 4K fine, and that's 7K recording downsampled to 4K, so that should be ultra sharp, ultra clean, ultra smooth. That's what we're recording in right now, so hopefully there's a lot of detail and information here in the shots. But it also eats up, your storage space quite a bit. You have 4K regular, which is just 4K, and then there's 4K crop, which is kind of interesting. So that's a 1.8 crop. So on full frame cameras, you have like a crop mode, which crops it down to APS-C size, so you get a little more depth or reach in your shots. But this is an APS-C camera and it has a crop that goes 1.8. So that's kind of crazy, right? Because, okay, I did some math here earlier in my notes. The R7's 4K crop mode crops the sensor by 1.8 on top of the natural 1.6 crop of an APS-C sensor. So your 70 to 200 becomes a 238 millimeter to 680 millimeter zoom lens. Like, that is nuts. That is nuts. And that doesn't even take into account digital IS, because digital IS zooms in quite a bit. There's a crop, and then there's digital IS enhanced, which zooms in even more. So yeah, you can get a pretty crazy crop in. So if you're shooting birds, little birds on distant branches, or you want to shoot animals at a super far distance, this camera might be pretty good. And let's say this is just with a 70 to 200, put a 100 to 500 on there. What could you possibly reach with a 100 to 500 with all these crops? Who knows? That's kind of interesting. And also you get 1080p on this camera as well. And the unfortunate thing with this camera is if you do shoot in slow-mo 120p, it does automatically jump into 1080p. So you won't get 4K 120, you'll get 1080p 120. But I will test that out in a future video, because if we take, I know with the EOS R, the codecs were so beefy that, now, I don't know if you can do this with the R7, but with the R, you could film in 1080p and export in 4K, and it looked great on YouTube. So we'll test that out with the R7. The problem with the R7, and this is another reason why professional videographers might not like it, is the fact that in terms of codecs, you only get IPB and IPB Light, which are the really super compressed codecs, and you're in 8-bit. So if you really want to push that color grade, I mean, you're shooting 8-bit 420 with an IPB compressed codec. So I don't know. Like I said, if you're just creating social media content and you just want a camera that works and functions and produces great content, R7 is great. If you're a professional videographer or someone who aspires to be a professional videographer, the camera might leave you wanting a little more. But it's not all bad news. There is some good news here. If you put the camera into C-Log 3 and want to shoot in C-Log, you get 10-bit 422. Let me double check that. Yeah, 10-bit 422 H.265 C-Log 3. So you get way better quality video if you shoot in C-Log 3. The only thing is you have to go through the process and color grade it and all that stuff, which is, I mean, if you want to be a professional videographer, that's something you got to do anyway. So you do have that option. You don't have C-Log 1 or 2, 2 being the one with the most dynamic range, 3 being the one in the middle, but hey, you got C-Log 3 on a camera at this price point, so that's pretty awesome. And another thing I want to mention, that the hot shoe connector on the R7 has that new, what is it, MI2, or that new fancy hot shoe connection with the pins in it, so you can attach devices and you can record directly into the camera without connectors and stuff like that. So you can invest in that new Tascam recorder with the XLR ports, and you can plug that into the R7, and you can record from XLR directly into the camera, which is good. It gives you fantastic audio options on the R7. And the other piece of good news there is that if you do upgrade to, let's say, an R5C or C70 or something like that, you can take that Tascam recorder with you, and it upgrades with you as you upgrade your equipment. So that's definitely a positive. And in terms of media storage, the R7 has 2 UHS 2 SD card slots, which is awesome. So if you're shooting weddings or commercial work or anything where you need to back up all your content, you can do that in camera. I know I've shot weddings with an EOS R before, and I have to keep replacing the SD cards every 20 minutes to an hour just to like switch them out all the time. So if a card does fail, I only lose a bit of the wedding and not the whole thing. But yeah, this camera has 2, so that's awesome. The other thing too with this camera is the write speeds max out at a V60 card, so you won't need anything faster than a V60 card, which will save you a lot of money. You don't have to buy Type A and all that stuff, so that's a positive too. In terms of the media, it won't cost you too much money to get the maximum or best footage out of this camera. All right, so now I want to talk about a couple of the negative things with the EOS R7, but before I get into that, I'm going to talk about one of the negative things that the internet is talking about, and I want to tell you that they're wrong. A lot of people are saying that Canon's APS-C censored cameras don't have wide enough lenses. They only go to 18mm, and 18mm converted through APS-C equivalent is 28mm, and they're like, oh, we need something wider for vlogging, and everyone is always thinking about RF lenses, but they forget about the EF lenses, and here is an EF 10 to 18mm, and if you want to vlog with the R7, I would strongly suggest picking one of these up. There we go, and here is a cheap budget JJC EF to RF adapter. I'm going to pop that on there, and now we're going to pop this onto the R7 and finish off the video with this 10 to 18mm. All right, so now we're filming with the 10 to 18mm on the EOS R7. We're at 18mm, and now we're going to zoom out to 10mm. Boom! There you go. So now, if you hear anybody else on YouTube talking about how there's no wide lenses for the APS-C system on Canon, you could tell them to come check out this video, because this is what you can do if you use an EFS lens instead of an RFS lens, because there's a ton of EFS lenses already out there, and with an adapter, it's fine. And if you want to vlog with it, I mean, it's a plastic build, it's super light, you can carry it around. Actually, I have a video about it. Which side would it be on? This side? Right there. I tested out this lens on the R5, and of course, when you put an EFS lens on the R5, it automatically goes into APS-C Crop mode, and it's a great lightweight vlogging lens for that system. So if you want to check out that video, there you go. Now, let's talk about 2 of the negative things with this R7. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is this multi-controller spinny dial joystick thingy on the back, and I had a paid gig the other day and I took the R7 out to do some shots. It was mostly video. They wanted some video content to create some reels for their Instagram account. And so I was shooting at a barber shop and, you know, guys getting their beards trimmed and haircut and all that stuff. And I was shooting with the camera and I found it very frustrating to use the wheel, and I found that I bumped the wheel a few times and changed the settings, and the joystick in the wheel is just, it's frustrating to use. I thought it would be kind of cool and I was excited to use it, but I found it a little more cumbersome than anything else. And the thing is, like, I don't understand with Canon is, like, we have on the R5 and the R6, there's like 3 dials. You have one for shutter speed, one for aperture, and one for ISO, and you just adjust which wheel you want to create your exposure. And for whatever reason, Canon decided to take the 3 wheels away and only give you 2 wheels on this camera. I don't understand. The R7 is kind of like the APS-C flagship for Canon. It should have the best features. I do appreciate the fact that the on-off switch has moved to the right side of the camera now, so you can do a little one-handed operation, but the dial should be there, not the on-off switch, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather have a dial there. The on-off switch should be right by the shutter release button, like it is on Nikon, like it is on Sony, like it is on Lumix, and that's where it should be. That makes the most sense. You pick up the camera, you have your on-off switch right there where your finger is. It works, it's great, and you know, there's no problems with it. This dial joystick thing is just, the joystick is too far, it doesn't feel very intuitive, which is unfortunate because I know Canon likes to create cameras that are very intuitive. And as a professional photographer, 18 years in the industry, what I love about Canon cameras is the fact that they get out of the way so you can just shoot. Like an R5 just works, everything is in the right place, you pick up the camera. I don't even have to think about the camera, I just think about what I want to create, my fingers do their thing, and boom. It works out perfectly. With the R7, I found it a little tougher. So that's just one of the things. Also with the on-off switch, I don't understand why it's on and off in video. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. It should be off, photo, and video. Why is on? On should be photo and video, and off should be in the middle. So flip it this way for video, flip it that way for photo, and off in the middle. And obviously you have to pass through the off to get from one side to the other, but the camera doesn't turn off unless it stays off for at least 2 seconds, right? So, you know, that just makes more sense to me. The other thing I want to complain about, and this hasn't become an issue for me, but I kind of see this as a potential issue, is that there's 2 mic holes on the top of the camera. Now, I don't know if they're protected or whatnot, but if you're shooting in the mud or the dirt, the sand or whatever, stuff tends to fall into those holes and it could just plug it up. I don't know, maybe that area is waterproof, isn't waterproof, water resistant, isn't water resistant. I don't know how it works, but I used to own a G7X Mark II and I did a lot of vlogging with that. And when it was raining, raindrops just fell into the mic hole at the top, and it was useless until the water evaporated. So those are my only real nitpicks with the camera itself. I think overall it's a fantastic camera, but the fact that it doesn't have 3 dials, I think that was a miss by Canon, because for those of us who have an R5 as a main camera and we want an R7 as a B camera, it would be nice if intuitively the dials and everything were the same, so we could just pick up one camera and the other camera and just use it without any issues. And that dial thing, I don't know. I like that Canon is innovative and creative and trying new things, but I think it you have a system and it works well, stick to it. I appreciate the change, but at the same time, it's not a change in the right direction. I mean, there's other things you could improve besides a dial joystick thing. Anyway, those are my nitpicks with the camera. They're very minor. I think overall it's a fantastic camera. Definitely check it out if you want to pick one up. I have affiliate links down below if you want to help out the channel. Feel free to click on them. It doesn't cost you anything more to buy anything through an affiliate link, but it helps me out a little bit. And of course, if you have any questions about the R7, definitely leave them in the comments below. I'll be making more reviews and tutorial videos about the R7, as well as putting it up against an R5 or an R and just testing to see which one is better in what situation. So there's a bunch more videos with the R7 coming soon, so definitely subscribe to the channel to see that. And with that being said, peace out. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys in the next video.